Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live. My name is Allie, and I am one of RANE's two cyber analysts, and I will be speaking with Haley Benedict, our other cyber analyst today, to discuss some of the current trends that we're seeing in the ransomware landscape. Haley, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here.
So, Haley, I suppose I'll kick the question off to you to begin and ask you, where do you evaluate the current ransomware landscape as it stands today? And what are your thoughts on some of the more notable incidents we've seen recently?
Yeah, so I'd say something that's really been impacting the ransomware landscape today has been the way that the advent of generative AI has really fueled all of it. And we're really seeing the effects of all of that now. So, something we're seeing a lot of are these ransomware builders also on the dark web, also ransomware as a service. It's just increasingly easy for threat actors to be able to just proliferate these strains, these families, and their services all over the place. They can generate it so easily. They can ask generative AI to improve upon existing strains, make them more sophisticated. And then people who previously maybe didn't have these technical skills and are new to the hacking realm can so easily carry out such activity now because they can buy it online. They can buy they can either buy the service, they can buy builders, or they can find like online forums that are just, hey, enter this prompt into ChatGPT and it'll help you get around it. Or there are ones that are specifically for cybercrime.
Yeah, a lot of experts saw a bit of a dearth in ransomware activity towards the end of 2022. And I think a fair amount of experts sort of saw ransomware as maybe having a slight decline in 2023. But I think from both of our perspectives, that's certainly not been the case. And I think another interesting development that maybe isn't so novel, but has been more pronounced recently is also ransomware actors increasing exploitation of supply chain hacks. And of course, the most high profile example of this year has been the Move It hack, which affected an email software service and now has, I think, affected over 1,000 organizations and several million people's data has been exposed. And so in addition to seeing more sophisticated and more disruptive ransomware attacks, you're also seeing these hacks that can have really widespread implications in just one exploitation. And to discuss some of the more regulatory and compliance aspects of this, something that we've been, of course, following are the new SEC stipulations to organizations, including requirements to report material cyber attacks. And we've looked into this, and the overall concept of material or what the threshold for that is still fairly vague. But I think in light of some recent high-profile ransomware hacks, including the ones against MGM and Caesars, the casinos, as well as Clorox, are now all going to be grappling with how they report these incidents and deal with the fallout of these ransomware attacks. So, Haley, looking into 2024, where do you have any thoughts on some of the trends that we're seeing from ransomware right now, or who you think the most prolific actors will be in the upcoming few months to the next year?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something in the 2024, it's really easy to say that there's going to be a continuation of a lot of these trends. They're just going to be exacerbated by the technological developments. Also, it's just threat actors learning from each other. Like, this is something that's working. How can I piggyback up onto that and do the same thing? And with these software supply chain hacks too, it's one way kind of to get biggest bang for your buck. I think that one thing that's going to be really challenging is grappling kind of with the regulatory and compliance stuff as these attacks become more damaging. How do you handle one, the reconnaissance? Like, how do you handle putting a stop to it, recovering from it, letting your customers know, letting your clients know, figuring out how exactly everything was damaged, and then also staying compliant and like avoiding government fees or government fallout there. So that's going to be something really difficult. But I think maybe in the more immediate term, something definitely to look out for. I think every year, kind of something that we see is a bit of a surge in cybercrime in the holiday season. And obviously, a lot of this is not necessarily ransomware. A lot of this is, more consumer activity, prompts like more theft, more phishing scams that are maybe holiday themed. But there's one thing, maybe like a little bit less obvious to consider that definitely will impact ransomware is kind of just the staff changes, people taking time off, they're operating, maybe people are covering roles that they're not usually covering, they're not as familiar with the protocols and everything, and that's something that threat actors are definitely going to take advantage of. They're definitely going to exploit these changes or like days off that people have, and maybe that's when they'll see their window.
Yeah, and another good area of discussion when it comes to the current trends in the ransomware landscape is the cyber insurance industry, which we've seen a lot of insurers attempt to put stipulations or exclusions on areas of cyber activity that are more state oriented, including war exclusion acts and more recently Lloyd of London's stipulation that it will exclude state-backed threat activity. But ransomware, of course, is typically under the purview of what characterizes cyber insurance. But because costs associated with hacks now are becoming so high, it's a good question about how the cyber insurance landscape will really try and tackle this issue of ransomware. And I don't know that insurers would have any way to include exclusions when it comes to ransomware activity, but I think we may see more caps on how insurers will really, how much they'll be willing to cover, and most likely more stipulations surrounding what kind of cybersecurity protocol organizations have in place beforehand, which hopefully will be a positive development in and of itself as organizations just invest more in these protections against ransomware. But
one other thing,
yeah.
one other thing along that line too, kind of, you've got the cyber insurance landscape on one end, you've got the reporting on another, but then there are also these requirements sometimes, or just requests from different governments saying just do not pay the ransom. And I mean, that's one way to combat the cyber criminal ecosystem. Like, don't feed into it, don't fuel it. But it's going to really create some challenges for organizations if if the threat actors are seeing that they're not paying and then just taking even more intensive measures to try and pressure them and extort money from them. So they carry out a ransom attack. They say your information will be decrypted once you pay the ransom, but they're not paying the ransom. Sometimes they'll hit them with another attack. And something that we're seeing too is, while in the past maybe it was like a minimum of 10 days before a threat actor could carry out another attack because they have to prepare for that and gear up for it, they can do it now in 2 days. This is a warning that came from the FBI in the past couple of days, actually, but they can do it so quickly that it's just, they're going to try and increase the heat, increase the pressure as much as possible.
The question about a ransomware ban is so interesting because the Counter Ransomware Initiative, which is a consortium of, I think, approximately 35 countries now, including the United States and Europe, are really trying to encourage non-mandatory bans and just really tell organizations that they should not pay the ransom. But of course, there's always a trade-off, because some organizations will say, or some experts say, that if countries really did begin to introduce ransomware bans, ransomware actors are infamously ingenuitive, and they'll just find a different way to extort their victim, including through, telling these organizations that they just should not report it. And then is this going to lead to less reporting and an overall continuation of the ransomware problem? And I think being cognizant, of course, that most of these ransomware actors are operating out of either Russian or Russian-aligned countries means that as long as these groups continue to be active, regardless of whether certain Western law enforcement initiatives succeed in breaking down infrastructure of these groups, as is often the case, they'll likely rebrand in the future. But anyways, I think that that's all that we have time for today, unless any of our listeners have any questions. If not, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about the coverage that Haley and I do, please go to RANE's Geopolitical Intelligence Solutions at ranenetwork.com. And thank you so much for joining us today.